Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've talked a lot about three different sports here today. Starting off in the NFL, we talked about some updates to quarterback battles with Bo Nix being named the starter in Denver, as well as what I think should happen in Pittsburgh with their quarterback situation. We talked about the MLB playoffs as they're just over a month away, setting the table for what could be a great finish in the wild card and a couple of division races, as well as talking about the ACC as college football starts up on Saturday. We'll talk about, in this segment, the continued preview of the NFL today, hitting our eighth and final division. I can't believe we're already here. Starting off with the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow is back to being healthy. We'll talk about what they did this offseason, what grade I will give them, and much more. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat option. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. But like I was saying, in this segment here, we are going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are a team that had a disaster of a season last year. They were coming in with Super Bowl expectations. They were coming in with the thought that they would be able to possibly make the big game. Instead, they get injury news right away. Joe Burrow hurts his calf in the preseason, in training camp. He doesn't come out 100% healthy. He starts to get healthy about 5 games in. They go on a bit of a run, and then he has season-ending surgery on his wrist, an injury that no quarterback in the history of the NFL has ever had to deal with before. So I'm curious how he's going to come back, as well as the defense. One of the low-key great parts, and one of the lower-key parts that was a huge reason that they were being taken seriously as a Super Bowl threat. One of the reasons they were able to take on the Chiefs really struggling last season, being ranked near the bottom in both the run and the pass defense. But they've made a lot of changes, whether good or bad. They cut some players, brought some guys in. They also had a little bit of a shakeup to their coaching staff. Offensive coordinator Brian Callahan, now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Do I think it's honestly going to make too big of a difference? No, I don't. The Brian Callahan wasn't calling plays. And as much as losing a coordinator can really hurt a team, when you lose a guy, an offensive coordinator that isn't calling plays, I don't think it's going to matter too much. The biggest difference is going to be in Joe Burrow, right? They have a couple of wide receiver situations right now that's going on. I do believe they'll be able to get those resolved. T. Higgins already said he's playing on his franchise tag. There's new information that Jamar Chase might hold in, and there's a real chance that he doesn't play week 1, which if he doesn't, that will throw a whole wrench in their entire season. But really what this year comes down to is Joe Burrow. Can he come back from injury? Can he be that guy that, was an MVP candidate, led them to a Super Bowl, led them to the brink of the Lombardi Trophy just a few seasons ago? If he can stay healthy, although that offensive line has deteriorated just a little bit, they have a real shot of making some noise. Again, this team, I think, as far as names, has gotten a little bit worse. They still have their top tier on offense in quarterback, Joe Burrow, their top 2 receivers, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. But Tyler Boyd follows Brian Callahan over to the Titans. He was one of the best slot receivers, a great safety valve for the Bengals, longtime Bengal, been there forever. They are trying to find a replacement for him. Currently, as it stands right now, they have it listed as Andre Osivas, currently named there. Rookie Jermaine Burton is on there on the depth chart, as well as Trenton Irwin, who both made both him and Isavas made big impacts last season. Mike Gesicki gets brought in as tight end. He has the ability to be a great receiving threat as well, but they lost a couple of things. They lost a bunch of players on the offensive line. It's not the same offensive line as it was. They bring in Trent Brown to replace him, but I think the offensive line might struggle a little bit. They also draft Amarius Mims. Amarius Mims, who is huge, big boy. He only started 8 games in college, though, so he doesn't have a lot of experience. We'll see if he gets to start in this league. Right now, he's listed as a backup, but he could bring a huge presence to the Bengals that is much needed. On the defensive side, they completely replace their safety duo. They bring in Geno Stone, DJ Turner to be the starting safeties there for them, Von Bell as well. This is going to be hopefully a better secondary. You can't really get much worse than they were last year as far as giving up explosive plays. I believe they were 31st in the league at that. So there is technically a spot down to go, but I think they will improve from there. Where I'm more concerned is the rushing game, right? They lose DJ Reader, one of the best run stuffers in the league, and even with him, they were one of the worst run stopping teams in the league. They bring in Sheldon Rankins, who is a big space eater in his own right, but he's not a run-stopping specialist like DJ Reader was. They still have Trey Hendrickson, who talked like he wanted out earlier on. We talked about him asking for a trade, not where you want him to be at as one of your best defenders. Sam Hubbard on the other end, the pass rush should be much better than it was, but the run, I'm a little worried about how they're going to handle it. As far as what the biggest difference will be, I think not having Joe Mixon in, replacing Joe Mixon with Zach Moss is going to be a bigger concern than a lot of people are saying. Now, I'm not the biggest Joe Mixon fan. Never have been. Probably never will be, if I'm being honest with you. I never really loved Joe Mixon as a running back. But what he did bring was, he's from great seasons with the Bengals. He gets traded to the Texans. They then bring in Zach Moss. And if there was one running back that gets a lot of touches that I liked less than Joe Mixon, it's Zach Moss. It was very hard for me to sit here and say Joe Mixon, but they brought in Zach Moss to replace him. And I am an even bigger Zach Moss hater than I am a Joe Mixon hater. Those are probably my two least favorite running backs as far as, the amount of touches they get in this entire league. I don't think either of them should be getting the workload that they get, especially Zach Moss. I know he's coming off a really good season filling in with the Colts, but it's just not going to work out the same way when he gets in. It's just not going to work out the same way when he gets in the backfield with the Bengals. It's just not the same. Overall, when we look at their draft, they don't have the most exciting draft. They draft Amarius Mims out of Georgia. Big guy, should help on the offensive line if he gets into the game. They have Chris Jenkins, defensive tackle from Michigan, should help as well. And Jermaine Burton, both of those should make all three of those should make immediate impacts. There's no huge names on this list that I think are going to explode and be the best pick of this draft, or really even a top tier pick. But it was a solid draft, just like it was a solid offseason. They lost a lot of pieces. They did their best to replace them. I'd say they were about even. I don't think this team has gotten better. I don't think this team has gotten worse. I think this team is about the same, but this is most likely their last year with this true Super Bowl window open. You have to start paying people soon. You have to start doing it. We're seeing it coming to a head with some of the receivers. You've already paid Joe Burrow. Trey Hendrickson is wanting out. He's not getting paid. This is going to be one of the last years for the Bengals to really make a run as this team, and we'll see how it goes. I'm going to give them a C for their offseason. I'm going to do this with as much optimism as I can. I'm throwing this last season out of the window because of injuries, but there were some telltale signs of regression, so it might not just be the injuries. But let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk all about the Bengals' schedule. Go through all 18 weeks, all 17 games, see if they can make a run in what I expect to be their final true attempt with their wide-open Super Bowl window. But let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the Bengals off-season. I gave them a C. I don't think they made too many improvements, but we're going to be optimistic and say that that season was out the window because of injury. But in this segment, we're going to talk all about their schedule. Give them a record prediction. See if they can capitalize on what, in my opinion, is the last year of their true Super Bowl window. We'll talk about that and more in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat option. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show today talking about the Cincinnati Bengals season. Go through all 17 games, all 18 weeks, and it starts off strong. Not a super tough schedule to begin with. I'm taking the Bengals. The Bengals in this schedule, since they did struggle last year, and this division is a really good division, it's kind of a mix. They don't have the toughest schedule. They get to take on the NFC East, which is top-heavy. Obviously, their division is tough. And they take on the AFC West, which, again, top-heavy. They have to take on the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Cowboys. But outside of those three, there are about 5 games that I expect in this division should be pretty easy for everyone. The Bengals start off their season, though, taking on the Patriots. Since they did have a bad season last year, finished 4th, they get a 4th-place schedule, and that is sure to help them as well. Starting off against the Patriots, who have not decided yet on a quarterback, but I don't think it's going to matter. The Bengals are going to win this game week 1, start off the season 1-0. Then they get their first real challenge on the road in Arrowhead, a tough matchup against the Chiefs, against Patrick Mahomes, but the Bengals have been a team that's been able to take care of the Chiefs in Joe Burrow's career, especially in the regular season. I'm going to give this one to the Bengals. Week 3, they get those Washington Commanders. They get the Washington Commanders at home with Jaden Daniels as the quarterback. That one I think could be a really sneaky good matchup, but I am going to give this one to the Bengals as well. They improve to 3-0 on the young year. Then they get the Panthers. On the road against Bryce Young and the Panthers, this one should be easy as well. They get a nice, easy 4-0. You take a look at the first 4 games. They have the Super Bowl champion and the first 3 picks in last year's draft. It only can really get harder from there. That's a nice, easy start to the year. And it starts off, once again, with reigning MVP Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson takes his talents into Cincinnati, and I think they lose that game. The Bengals start off 5-0. Generally, they're known for slow starts, but I think they've got a chip on their shoulder. Now, a lot of this does have to do with Jamar Chase being in the lineup. If he's not there, a couple of these games could go differently. I still think at this point, they're 3-2, even without Jamar Chase. But then they get the Giants. Giants on the road. And I'm going to do my best to make this sound like a game, but it's not going to be. The Giants are going to get killed in this one. Their secondary just simply isn't good enough, and the Bengals should take care of business. They improve to 6-0 on the young season. A nice start, starting off with 6 straight wins. But then they get another division battle, this time on the road, an Ohio State battle taking on the Browns. I think this is where they take their first loss of the year. The Browns beat the Bengals. They fall to 6-1. Then they get the Eagles. Again, not an easy matchup. I do think they'll be able to win this, although I think Saquon might give them some fits. The Bengals will win this game, though, since it's at home. They improve to 7-1 on the year. Then they get the Raiders. Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. Again, I think this is Gardner Minshew's Raiders-led team. Could give a lot of teams fits, but I think the Bengals are going to be able to take care of business. They improve to 8-1. Then they get the Ravens on the road, and I don't think they're good enough to sweep Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. In Baltimore, I think they lose this one, fall to 8-2. Then they get the Chargers. And again, you talk about a nice cupcake schedule, but I think the Chargers will win this one. I think Justin Herbert is due for one of those games, and I think this is the one that it's going to happen. I think the Chargers win. They fall to 8-3. So through 11 weeks, 8-3, they hit their bye. A nice break later in the season than they might want, but it's not a bad spot to have it. If they were to have it anywhere, I think a little bit later for this Bengals team would be good. Get their guys rested up and prepared for a run to the playoffs. They start off immediately with another division game, this one at home against the Steelers. The Steelers have a brutal schedule down the stretch, but we'll see how they're able to handle it. I think they lose this one. I think the Steelers and the quarterback situation isn't going to be enough to keep up with the Bengals. The Bengals win, snapping a 2-game losing streak. Then they get the Cowboys, probably their biggest and final test of the season. Again, this is a relatively easy schedule. Outside of the division games, this is a relatively easy schedule. The Cowboys on the road in Jerry World. I think the lack of a run game for the Cowboys is really what's going to be their downfall here. I think the Bengals win this one on the road. Then they get Will Levis and the Titans, a rematch with offensive coordinator Bill Callahan, and this one could be tough because Bill Callahan might know what's going on a little more and prepare that defense. So this one I think will be really close, but I think the Titans are going to be able to pull. I think the Bengals are going to be able to pull this one out against the Titans. Then they get the Browns. Just a couple weeks left. They're currently sitting at 12-3 on the year. Take on the Browns at home. I think that's going to be enough for a win. Improve to 12-3 on the year after that one. Then they get the Broncos, and we've talked a lot about the Broncos and Bo Nix. Bo Nix wins the starting job, and he's looked really good. But I don't think this is a Broncos team that's good enough to beat the Bengals here. They lose. The Bengals improve to 13-3. And closing out the season, this game, as it stands right now, we'll learn about the rest of the division, but this could potentially be for the division with the way that it stands, with how good this division is, or for the 1 seed in the AFC. They take on the Steelers on the road, and the Steelers are looking to not go under 500. And I think that is enough motivation for Mike Tomlin to pull this one out in the final week. They finish off their year sitting at 13-4. They make the playoffs there. We'll see if they win the division tomorrow when we talk about the Ravens. But this is going to be a really good football team. I really do believe that they will be able to bounce back after what was an abysmal season last year. Everything that could have gone wrong for them basically did go wrong. I think they made the right changes. I think Joe Burrow will be healthy, and I think that's going to be the difference. I think they make the playoffs here at 13-4. Let me know what you think of the Cincinnati Bengals. I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know if I'm way off. Let me know if you think they're done, falling off a cliff here. But I've got them winning 13 games. Anyway, thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Come back, same place, same time tomorrow. We'll be talking about the Baltimore Ravens as well as the Big 12 in college football and any other major news coming out from around the world of sports. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye-bye. I feel like it's gonna be a bad day.